This is day 1 of the June-July 87 7-day retreat. There are quite a number of people here who have never been to one of these retreats or to a talk. So we will start out by saying something about listening and talking. The whole process. We already mentioned last night, but you may not have been at that talk. Please make yourselves comfortable for this talk. If you cannot sit comfortably for an hour in a certain way, then bring in a bench or a chair or any number of cushions. So the body and mind don't have to contend with pain while listening it. So that as much energy as possible is there for in the listening. Also, if you find that you're tired by the time the talk starts, there is a rest period before the talk, which can be used for taking a nap. If one is a kitchen worker, maybe not the first day, there may have been a lot of things to be finished. One may not have slept well during the night, which is almost inevitable when one sleeps in a new place for a lot of people. But can one be as fresh as possible at this time? Listening with an openness that is not anchored in any particular dogma or belief or prejudice or opinion or tradition or background of any kind. Is that possible for such a listening, such an openness to take place as one listens to words spoken? Because the words are not spoken to establish a tradition or speak out of a tradition. Opinion may creep in, but they are not spoken to present opinion or point of view or dogma or doctrine. What we're looking at together here in a talk is the human mind and body, which are inseparable, which are an inseparable process, an inseparable, interlaced process. We're looking at what goes on in human beings. Not just on a personal level, even though there it is where one can observe the clearest, the most authentically within oneself. But also what goes on in human beings everywhere. So we're trying to talk at a very fundamental level. Even though we are the specific manifestations of this fundamental level of human behavior. So the words aren't spoken to be registered in the memory as one usually does when one attends a lecture. This is not a lecture in any ordinary sense. It is for all of us, including the one who's talking, to look while listening/talking. I'm also listening. Listening to the words that are spoken. Looking at what it is that is to be expressed as clearly as possible in words. And in this looking we can share. So that it is not anymore a matter of agreement or disagreement, taking sides, but seeing something that is so. If it is not seen to be so, please let us take it up in a meeting. I may not have expressed clearly, I may have been wrong, so we start over again. But can we start on the same level? Not on the level of a teacher and her students. I find in publications other than our own, when this person may be written about, is always Toni and her students, or Toni's students. I have no students. You come here not as students. If you see yourself this way, can you see that this is an image you hold of yourself, and that you hold an image of this person here as a teacher, and with that a certain set has been created for this communication here, which may not be conducive to the open listening that we've just talked about. Because with the idea of student-teacher go all kinds of emotions which reach way back into our past and are triggered by a present image. Somebody coming into a meeting told me of the anxiety of coming into the meeting, meeting this teacher. And that is not a new thing. I mean, the meeting is new, but the idea is old. The meeting is new. The thought/feeling, I'm meeting a teacher, I have to be in a certain way, I've had to have something prepared, what will she think of me, I want to be successful, I'm afraid of being a failure. That's ancient thinking. Do you see that? That these ancient images are carried around and projected on a fresh situation, which then cannot be entered into freshly. It's already overcast by old ideas and emotions. Now, usually after such an opening talk, some people will say in a meeting, "Why do you say you're not a teacher? You're the one who's sitting in front with a microphone. Why isn't someone else giving a talk?" And there may arise this feeling of that there is double speak. I think that's a term that's been used, double speak going on, saying I'm not but still acting like one. It's true, it's only one person in this retreat, or in the retreats here, that is giving talks. Doesn't prevent anybody else from giving talks. We don't have an arrangement for having them here. But anybody can give a talk. There's nothing special about it. don't think we can number them, the places where different teachers, people are talking, can be heard, can be listened to. And there's no obligation for anyone who is coming here just to listen to this one person. One can go any place, listen anywhere to anyone. Undeniably, there's this one person who in the retreat is giving a talk, and people are sitting the way they are. Sometimes I talk very quietly, it's hard to hear way back. Some people like to be close to the one who's talking. But in speaking here, for myself, I don't have an image of myself as being anybody except talking. Not talking to people who are seen as being this or that, but just we're talking together. So that's the only reason I don't accept this image or carry it around. It's an unnecessary hindrance in our interrelationship. One person asked, well, how do you free yourself of this image? I don't have to free myself of it, I don't have it. If it's not there, there needs to be no battle, no getting rid of. And if there's the wholeness of listening, of attending this instant, there's no room for images. If they crop up in the moment of inattention, they can be seen for the disturbance or hindrance that they create. That can be seen very clearly. And the mind does not have to engage in something that it sees as being a hindrance, a disturbance, a separation, a wall. So this is the first question. How does one see oneself? Can't a question like this evoke a host of images? And can one see that being this or that is either fact, that one is a man or a woman is a fact, but that one has images of how a man should act, how he should see himself, or how a woman should see herself. Then imagery starts, ideas, which may have nothing to do with fact any longer. They have to do with cultural, social, historical conditioning, which in itself is a fact that it is taking place. But does one have to be identified with any image just because it has been carried over culturally, historically, socially, racially, maybe for thousands of years? It doesn't mean one has to identify with this image. If one is not identified with it, one doesn't have to fight it. One just doesn't climb into that robe in the first place, or leaves it if one sees clearly what it is. A robe or a coat of armor. We were talking this morning with someone. This person seeing how confining images are, like a coat of armor in which one rattles around. But then the question, isn't that my existence? Aren't these images necessary for my existence? They seem to be. This is how we're living. We're living up to images which have been held up to us, fed into us, which we have adopted ourselves as being very desirable, glamorous, or virtuous. And with each image, a conflict of the way we feel and are, and having to live up to the image. And of course, since there are innumerable images that we consider our own, that we're identified with, there's conflict between these images. The image of being a tolerant person and thinking intolerantly happened in the last retreat. It was quite dramatic. A person noticing during walking his criticism of the way some people were walking. A judgment, and not just a mild judgment, as he said. It was really rejecting some people. This is how the mind, the thoughts were operating. And suddenly realizing the intolerance of that. And then I've always thought I was a tolerant person. And this is what people think of me. I'm known as a tolerant person. And the incompatibility of one's usually semi or unconscious thoughts and the image. When one becomes aware, then the conflict. Why not drop all images to see what is there? Tolerant or intolerant? Only in this way can there be a real insight into how the mind churns and throws out ideas, evaluations, criticisms, judgments, comparisons, every moment almost. I don't mean by throwing out, getting rid of them, just producing them according to ancient and recent conditioning. So coming back to the question of this person, don't I need these to exist? Or the next question that followed was, what would existence be without them? That question, what would existence be without images, is a theoretical speculation, isn't it? At the moment that one is beset by images. Identified with them, feeling in need of them to function in accordance with a proper way one considers proper. Then the idea, what would I do without them, can only cause anxiety or an unwillingness to look at the images. But if one has no assumption that they are needed or that they are not needed, no assumption, no conclusion about it, then is there a freedom to see the image, the identity with it, the clinging to it, the attachment to it, or the rejection of it, the suffering from it, the conflict between them, the difficulty of relating with each other because you have your images, I have mine, about myself, about each other. We've talked about it many times, but can one see it freshly as it takes place in ourselves and in each other? Not just to understand the words, understand them better now because one heard them many times, but to look, to listen. One person mentioned coming into the meeting room, the anxiety felt in sitting, in coming in, the anxiety of comparison. Incidentally, we're using people's questions to talk about it in depth here together, because one person's problem, question, if looked at a thorough and deep level, is everyone's problem and question. I may not repeat verbatim correctly what was said because I do not remember it. So don't feel misunderstood if your question is not repeated correctly. It's a new question now. It has become a new thing for all of us to look at. So this person who felt the anxiety and then the realization of constantly comparing oneself with others. Maybe if one is new to a retreat like this, or this particular retreat, comparing oneself favorably or unfavorably with in posture or in demeanor, assuming others are deeper or not so deep. Just a constant image making and constant comparison. Can that be seen and dropped in the seeing? Is that possible? Because as long as that is going on, that part of the brain which remembers, which makes images, which compares images, is booked. It's booked like a full plane, no more seats in there. It's just constantly going. and at the moment of churning, in comparison. How can one be here? With an openness of listening in which the birds, the wind, the sounds of people breathing or walking is heard as it occurs, in all simplicity. This is something to really see and find out for oneself, that when thinking and comparing and the anxiety that goes with it, when that is going on, the mind is not open to listen. It is very narrow and confined. And the bodily emotions, anxiety, they cause conflict too. One doesn't want to feel anxious. So there is an opposition to that feeling. One wants to feel better, which is new thoughts, and there'll be new feelings going with that, and emotions and physical tensions. All of this little churning bundle of me, with the doors and windows closed in the churning. And yet there are sounds, and there's wind, there's the coolness of the air. Occasionally a frog and these many different birds, which is all one sound, even though with limitless nuances. There's the breathing that is going on all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. Very light, very heavy, very shallow, very choppy, it doesn't matter. Can it be perceived? Because it is part of the whole. Cannot be listened to and felt if the mind is churning in images and comparisons, and the anxiety arising from that. And yet, the anxiety having arisen, can it also be listened to with the same unprotected, non-defensive openness that listens to the birds, the breathing, maybe a pain in the knee or the back. An openness that is not eager to know what it is that is there. The brain is eager to label and then to react. I like this fly, I don't like the fly. But it doesn't have to do that, it just does it from habit. But if there's awareness of it, that labeling process can be interrupted. Not, I am interrupting it. That's, I want to interrupt it. That's another thought, another image. I must be without thoughts. I must be without reactions. Just the awareness of labeling. These are birds. This is a fly. And then listening again. What is it if I don't know it, if I don't have a word for it? Try it right now. If the mind is not open in listening without labeling, then what is there? Can whatever is there, a resistance, a feeling of resistance or fear, or the idea I can't do that, others probably can, I wish I could do it like her or him, can all of that be listened to, heard, seen, felt as happening this instant? And then again, is there anything else going on beside these reflections upon myself and others? Let me hear, let me be quiet for a moment. There's no method in this, there's no doctrine in this, it's just very simple. Awareness of what is actually happening without the effort of willpower. Willpower is always steered by idea. I must attain that which is an idea in order to become such and such, which is an idea. And the motive to arouse the willpower comes from those ideas we've come across or have been indoctrinated in. Willpower is the desire to achieve something, to attain or become something or somebody. It is structured with thought. It cannot exist or take place without thought. But an instant of listening needs no will. Do you see that? It's just call, call, call. So in sitting and becoming aware how possessed we are with willpower, because this is how we've been trained since we were very little. Can one pay attention to this whole syndrome of will without having any opinions about it? Just watch it. And that willpower cannot dissolve willpower. It's its own continuation. But it can be listened to, attended to very sensitively. What it does to the whole physique, to the whole organism. How the muscles are tensing with will, the organs, the glands, the brain. And can one listen to this as one listens to the birds chirping? The tension of will felt throughout the body. Not in order to get rid of it, but because it's there, if it's there. And maybe in this openness, unprejudiced attention, feel the melting away of will. Through no will, just through quiet, open, non-defensive awareness. People say, well, if I didn't have the will to do this work, I wouldn't have made all these lengthy, time-consuming preparations to come here. Because I wanted to be here. There had to be will to make this possible. It may very well be so. But we're not looking at the past right now. We're looking at what's happening now. And even though will may have made this trip possible and may make it possible to sit here and listen, can one now listen to this very will? As it comes up, now that I'm here, now I got to achieve something, get someplace, be somebody, become something more important or worthwhile than what I've been up till now. If these are the thoughts, I'm just giving examples. I'm not saying these are the precise thoughts that take place. Everyone has their own variety, but it's the same kind. I will, I must, and the becoming that is connected with it. Can this, now that one has arrived here, by whatever means, be questioned, be looked at, felt, sensed, listened to, along with everything else that's there, inside and out, barring nothing from this gentle scrutiny. I say gentle because it does not have the violent edge of will. Maybe openings like this for moments, and then the mind goes on its habitual tracks. There's inattention, no awareness that it's going on. One person said that, I came here with such expectations of quietness. We talked about it last night, didn't we? Expecting the inner quietness because of the absence of the outer entanglements, the outer demands and noises, problem situations, the absence of all of that, hoping that that will bring inner quiet. That's a false expectation. One best arrive here with no expectations, but the mind isn't structured that way. It always expects something. So, now that the churning of the mind really comes into awareness because of the absence of outer distractions. Can't throw oneself into work or into a relationship or whatever, into TV, movies. Here one is with all of this somehow coming into awareness. And instead of marveling that this is possible at all, to become aware of what happens in this computer, we reject it, we are anxious over it. In conflict with it. Person expressed that very well. The quiet body, the emotionless body, and this interminably thrashing brain, mind. And the dizziness that seems to result from it, because one doesn't know anymore, what am I? Am I quiet or am I moving? One is both. It's both. The body is sitting quietly, and thoughts are moving noisily. Noisily meaning engaging emotions, feelings. And conflict. Can that whole thing, the quiet body, the moving thoughts, the aroused emotions, can it all be there as something that's actually, factually taking place in this immense universe? It is taking place. It's no denying it if it is taking place. But what of it? So it is. So is the bird. So is the breathing. So is the air. The clouds, the trees, the grasses. Everything is just simply there. As it is. Why the conflict? It's because of thought, isn't it? Thought saying it shouldn't be like this, coming here, the mind should be quiet. Listen. It's just that. If the brain is producing the word airplane, that's just what it's doing. But the word airplane is not this hum there. And to think, I wish it wasn't there because it disturbs quietness, that's conflict, isn't it? In talking a bit, somebody said, where do I begin in all of this? Not to make a problem out of it right now. Not where one was, or where one should be, or wants to be, but now. Not knowing what now is, because to most of us it's a concept. But it's the fly climbing the arm, the plane, the birds, the conflict, the churning, the motionlessness. But not naming it, just as it is. If the name comes up, the name is not the real thing. The real thing has already changed. The fly is gone. Can one live one moment, one instant without conflict? And not go to sleep because one thinks one needs challenge. If one does feel sleepy and isn't in bed, one happens to sit in a round that isn't finished, what is sleepiness? Not to take it for granted or approach it with one's habitual ways, but wonder about it. What is it? Without any will to change it. Just to feel it out completely without any resistance or opposition to it. We will end here for today.